Good day. Welcome to the market analysis for trends in enterprise architecture. I'm Neill. I run the enterprise research division and the technical counsel team at Infotech Research Group. Infotech Research Group is a research firm, and we work with many organizations across North America. My team in particular works with organizations such as NASA, Harvard Business School, State of Michigan, Curate Retail Group, and many others. We work with chief architects day to day. That's what we do. And I'd like to share with you some of these trends, some of these areas that we see real focus on going forward. Some of the areas that I'm going to be working on. So CIO priorities. So what does the CIO actually care about? What does the enterprise architect need to do to make sure the CIO is satisfied? What are those main challenges? What do we need to do in terms of difficult things? What do enterprise architects need to do which are challenging to those architects? How do we collaborate? How do we make sure that IT and the business work together? And how do we make sure the business is satisfied with what we're doing in architecture? And how does AI play a role into enterprise architecture these days? AI is everywhere, and we need to talk about that. And the final thing is zero trust and security. So zero trust is absolutely a concept that's going to occur again and again, and security is one of those areas that's going to get funding. So why don't architects help to make sure that zero trust is implemented the right way? These are the CIO priorities for enterprise architecture. Now, this graph, you can see growing investments up the top of the graph and the actual invested on the right-hand side of the graph. So we can see AI not invested as much as companies want to yet. They haven't put as much money into AI as they want to yet. They're going to, but they've not done it yet. So it's a growing investment. They're actually creating investments for AI, but it's not completely invested yet. What has been invested in already, and funds have been identified and put aside, are things like, you can see at the top right here, cybersecurity, cloud computing, APIs, and data. So it should be no surprise that cybersecurity comes out on the top right, because you can always get funding for cybersecurity. It's very easy to say, let's focus on making sure our ecosystem is tight and secure and reduce the risk of any kind of attack of any kind, including through APIs, which is where most attacks are coming from now anyway. We'll get into cybersecurity a little bit later in the presentation. We also can see an interesting fact here that the on-premise servers, in particular mainframes or standard applications that are on bare metal in your data center, they don't plan to invest any more. So investment's already done, not going to grow any more investments in that area. So going forward, enterprise architects have to help people with how do we adopt cloud? How do we move to the cloud? How do we transform our workloads into a cloud system so that it works over there? What are the main challenges for enterprise architects right now? One of the big challenges is agility. And what I mean by agility is not necessarily agile or safe or any of those frameworks, but the ability for architecture to pivot and be nimble when the business is changing what they're doing. And the business is changing what they're doing because of the advent of exponential IT, because the advent of things like artificial intelligence. So generative AI is everywhere right now. So off the shelf, you can buy products which do amazing things, Copilot and all kinds of interesting business-focused help. And the business is buying these things right now, whether IT like it or not. So architects have to really keep up with that and be those kind of thought leaders and make sure the business is making the right decisions when they're going through those investments and working with the business to make sure that the IT ecosystem supports what the business is trying to do. You do that by managing that business architecture. So understanding how the business works, how the business collaborates, what business capabilities are involved, understanding how the process works and how the process can potentially be improved by the advent of new AI-based technology is an important point for architects to be involved in. And of course, that data and security side. In order to get to concrete, really good quality AI, you need an amazing data pipeline. You need a data warehouse. You need a data lakehouse. You need data integration, all of these concepts. So focusing on data and investing in data and obviously securing that data as well is going to be an important part for enterprise architects to be involved in. Enterprise architecture maturity here, from a strategic perspective, it's interesting if we go down the bottom and look at what domains are involved. So these questions were asked not just to architects, but to all kinds of stakeholders across many organizations. And we came back with, integration and applications, obviously part of architecture, and that's what they do. Yeah, no problem. People didn't know that business architecture is something that architects do. Information and content architecture, and even security. So they don't consider that part of architecture. Well, why not? That absolutely should be. So that's where we want to focus on from an architecture perspective going forward. And what stakeholders are engaged with architects on the right here. So you can see that lots of people think that it's just IT that is involved in interacting with architects. It's not just IT, of course, it's business and IT together. In terms of the organizational structure of organizations, we can see that not everyone knows even that the head of architecture has been appointed. This is a real problem. If you don't know you've got an architecture team there and what architects do, how are you going to engage them? So that's a real big problem with many organizations. The other problem to call to here is that staffing level. Those that do understand what architecture is and see that they're there, they don't have enough people to do those activities. And then regarding the skills side, the skills are just undocumented. Even if architects are there and they're actively participating in projects, we don't actually know what their skills are. They're just uber individuals that know lots about IT and technology. But actually listing the specific skills that they have and they're executing on is lacking. On the tools front and enterprise architecture, it's interesting that when we did these surveys across many organizations, only 8% of the people said, yes, we have an architecture tool. So they might have an architecture tool but not know about it. So that might be, a don't know. And 25% said no. So that means they don't have an architecture tool. Well, what are they doing? Perhaps they're using Visio or PowerPoint or other content, other tools to model architecture, not a proper tool to put everything in a repository. Even when they do use the tool, who uses the tool? Well, most people say don't know. Most people say it's non-existent. And those that do have a tool and do know about it just think the architecture department uses it and no one else. So you don't have that collaboration between architects using the tool and business folk using the tool, or analysts, or data people, or others. One of the important points of communication in enterprise architecture is the collaboration between different architects. It's important for organizations to create that collaboration mechanism. We call it guilds. So you might have a business architecture guild, a technology architecture guild, a data architecture guild. And it enables people that are involved in those disciplines to come together, share ideas, and bring up proposals on new standards to the architecture review board, for example. Those skills are important to put in place because if you don't have them, then the satisfaction of the business with the communication from IT is lowered. When we say IT, data architecture, technology architecture, application architecture, normally IT focused. Business architecture is normally business focused. So when you have technology architects talking to the business, but they're talking to the business in silo and not having a holistic view and a one voice from the technology architecture perspective, it confuses the business and they're not satisfied. So that's where we get that 25.8% from. We, of course, with the advent of exponential IT and AI increasing as it is, we need enterprise architects to lean in and start to educate and coach and mentor those in the organization of what AI applications and solutions and technologies available and how's that going to help the business. In particular, business architecture we were talking about before, understanding how the business can be improved, how can they change the way they behave based on new technology to help them out, to supplement what they're doing. And if you think that that AI is ubiquitous and it's intrusive right now, just wait until the future. I bet the business is buying AI software right now without you knowing. It happens everywhere. So enterprise architects can really help here because they can lean in and start to educate and say, well, what does explainable AI actually mean? There's plenty of software that you can get off the shelf, which can give you an answer, which can literally calculate based on your data, an answer to a particular problem. And I say, here's the answer. Well, great. Why is that the answer? don't know. That's what the AI told me to. So that's not good enough. We need to educate and we need to get people literate in being able to explain why the algorithm came up with that solution. And we need to make these things trustworthy. I always talk about data before I talk about AI, because you've got to have a really good data pipeline, really good data quality. You've got to have a data lakehouse. You've got to have master data management, possibly. All these concepts, data management, comes in before AI, because otherwise, if you train AI with your data and your data is not as good quality as you want it to be, your answers aren't going to be as good quality as you want them to be either. So architects can put in place tools and technology to make that more transparent. Where does data come from? What happens in its pipeline? How do you explain where the data comes from, where it goes to, and how you came to that decision? And how do you integrate these roles and responsibilities together? In particular, when you're implementing AI and you're training your own models, you've got things like data ops and ML ops, and they need to connect together so that you can automatically create new implementations and new versions of the trained model as you go forward. So architects need to lean in there and say, okay, let's make sure that your DevOps pipeline is what it should be, your MLOps pipeline is what it should be, your DataOps pipeline, so that we get very, very quick turnaround as models are being trained in different ways, or as you add new data and new pipelines. And of course, we need to monitor those things as well. So architecture can help in providing the information to enable an organization to monitor the data and say, okay, this is the way the data looks. This is the information that we've got that we're pushing into the models. And this is why you're going to get the output that you're getting. So architects need to use that background, use that tenure, use that experience to lean in and help the business make decisions on AI and make sure that we're doing AI in a responsible, risk-free, and fair way. One of the areas that we've done a lot of work with many organizations is zero trust in architecture. So we worked with NASA recently on their zero trust architecture. And one of the areas that we have to focus on when we're talking about zero trust is identifying a trust score. The ability to be able to say, when someone logs into a system with their enterprise digital identity, how much am I going to trust that individual? And which score do you use? Do you use a NIST framework? Do you use the ISO framework? There's all kinds of ways you can do it. But that trust score will probably be reflected on how did you log in? Did you use biometrics to log in? Is it multi-factor authentication? How did you actually do that authenticate? And that will give you some kind of level of authority. Which network are you logging into? That might give you another bit of authority, depending on who you are individually and where you come from, which organization you're with. There's lots of parameters that are going to contribute to that trust score. Then we match that trust score to the information that you're trying to access, or the service, or the application you're trying to access. And based on that, we can then match those two together for access to the organization, to the application. So this continuously changes and evolves as well. So because it's metadata driven, your ability to implement zero trust is dynamic. So there's lots of different technologies and lots of different architectural components that need to be put in place in order to implement zero trust architecture from the ground up. Thank you very much for coming to this event. I hope you've got some insights and some good information from this keynote. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the conference. Please enjoy all of these great presentations and grab that information, bring it back to your own organizations and make that special. Thank you.